They say that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But in the annals of the true history, the history written in red, power does not just corrupt the soul, it transforms the body. We look back at Gaius Julius Caesar as the greatest general of antiquity, a man who conquered Gaul and crossed the Rubicon. We are taught that he was assassinated because he wanted to be a king. This is a lie. The Senate did not sharpen their knives because Caesar wanted a crown. They sharpened them because they realized too late that he was no longer a man at all. The year is 44 BC. Rome is the center of the world, a sprawling metropolis of marble and filth, teeming with 1 million souls, but a shadow has fallen over the Republic. Caesar, recently named Dictator Perpetuo, has changed. He is rarely seen by day. When he addresses the plebeians, he stands deep in the shadows of the rostra, his skin the color of old parchment, his eyes hidden beneath the crimson hood of the Pontifex Maximus. The infection did not begin in Rome. It began 8 years earlier, in the dark, ancient forests of Gaul. At the siege of Alesia, history tells us the Gallic chieftain Vercingetorix surrendered his weapons at Caesar's feet. In this timeline, he surrendered something else. The Druids of Gaul possessed a secret older than Rome, a blood magic derived from the primal beasts of the north. Vercingetorix offered Caesar the dark gift in exchange for a quick death. Caesar, driven by an insatiable hunger for dominion, accepted. He returned to Rome not just as a conqueror, but as an apex predator. The falling sickness that historians attribute to epilepsy was actually the body rejecting the sun, the violent seizures of a biology rewriting itself to consume blood. By March of 44 BC, the hunger is becoming impossible to hide. Servants disappear from the villa of Caesar. Corpses of young gladiators are found drained in the alleys of the Subura. The senators Brutus, Cassius, and the 60 conspirators are not acting out of political jealousy. They are acting out of primal terror. They have seen the way Caesar looks at their jugular veins during debates. They smell the metallic scent of dried blood on his toga. They know that if Caesar is allowed to leave for his planned campaign against Parthia on March 18th, he will not just conquer the East, he will turn the legions into a horde of monsters. The Ides of March is not an assassination, it is an exorcism. But you cannot kill what is already dead. The morning of the Ides of March arrives with a storm that turns the sky the color of a bruised plum. Caesar enters the theater of Pompey where the Senate has gathered. He ignores the soothsayer's warning, not out of arrogance, but because time no longer holds meaning for him. As he takes his golden chair, the air in the chamber grows cold, a supernatural chill that makes the breath of the conspirators mist in the air. Tillius Cimber approaches first, grabbing Caesar's toga, pulling the fabric down to expose the neck. This is the signal. Casca strikes from behind, driving his Pugio dagger downward toward the shoulder. In the history we know, Caesar gasps, struggles, and eventually succumbs to 23 stab wounds, covering his face in shame. In this timeline, the dagger hits flesh, but it does not sink. It sounds like metal striking granite. The silence that follows is heavier than the storm outside. Caesar slowly turns his head too far, his neck cracking at an unnatural angle to look Casca in the eye. The wound on his shoulder doesn't bleed red. It oozes a thick, black, terror-like substance that smells of ancient earth and rot. The Senate floor erupts into chaos. The conspirators, driven by adrenaline, rush in. Brutus Cassius Decimus, they all strike, plunging their blades into his chest, his stomach, his groin. But Caesar does not fall. He begins to laugh, a low, wet sound that vibrates in the listener's bones. Then, the massacre begins. It is not a fight. It is an industrial dismantling of human bodies. Caesar moves with a blurring velocity that the human eye cannot track. He catches Decimus's arm and tears it from the socket with a casual effort of snapping a twig. He crushes the skull of Casca between his palms like a ripe grape. The Curia of Pompey becomes an abattoir. Togas are soaked in crimson. Senators scream and scramble over the benches, slipping on the entrails of their colleagues, trying to reach the locked doors. Brutus, the last one standing, holds his dagger with trembling hands, staring at the thing that used to be his father figure. Caesar doesn't say "Et Brute," he simply opens a jaw that unhinges like a serpent's and tears out Brutus's throat. When the doors finally open, Mark Antony and the Praetorian Guard rush in, swords drawn. They stop dead. 60 senators lie in pieces on the marble floor. Standing in the center is Caesar, drenched in blood, his skin glowing with a revitalized, terrifying youth. He looks at the terrified soldiers, wipes the blood from his lips, and issues a single command that echoes with a demonic authority: kneel. And they do. News of the Red Senate spreads across the Republic, not by courier, but by the terrified whispers of refugees fleeing the capital. Rome has ceased to be a city of men. It has become a larder. Caesar does not hide his nature. He declares the Pax Sanguinis, the peace of blood. He dissolves the traditional military structure and institutes the right of the wolf. The 10th Legion, his most loyal veterans, are the first to be given the choice: eternal life and eternal hunger, or death. They choose the blood. The transformation of the Roman military is a masterpiece of logistical horror. The legions no longer march during the day. They sleep in mobile earthworks, buried beneath the soil to escape the burning sun of the Mediterranean. They march only under the moon, moving with supernatural speed, carrying no torches. A Roman army on the move used to be a loud, clanking machine of iron and shouting. Now, it is a silent river of predators. The remaining free forces of the Republic, led by the few generals who escaped the purge, rally in Greece. They amass an army of 80,000 men at the plains of Philippi. They expect a traditional engagement. They prepare their pila, their shields, and their cavalry. But Caesar does not deploy tactics found in any manual. He waits for the new moon. The Battle of Philippi begins in total darkness. The Republican soldiers stand in their lines, trembling, straining their eyes against the black void. They hear nothing but the wind, until the screaming starts. Not from the front, but from the middle of their own ranks. The vampire legions have not marched at them, they have moved through them, flitting between the gaps in the line like mist. The slaughter is absolute. It is not a battle. It is a feeding frenzy. Standard-bearers are dragged into the dark by unseen hands. Centurions are decapitated by claws that shear through bronze helmets. The famous Roman testudo formation is useless against an enemy that can leap over shield walls or punch through them with superhuman strength. The sounds of the battlefield change from the clash of steel to the wet tearing of meat and the desperate gurgling of dying men. By dawn, the field is silent. There are no prisoners taken for slavery. The 80,000 men of the Republic are drained dry, leaving a field of white, bloodless husks for the vultures. The civil war is over. The harvest has begun. With the Republic dead and the internal threats consumed, the hunger of the empire turns outward. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace, is established, but it is a peace of the grave. The borders of the empire are no longer defensive lines. They are hunting fences. Caesar, now an immortal god-emperor seated on a throne of black obsidian in the Curia, decrees the tributum, sanguinis the blood tax. Client kingdoms in Egypt, Judea, and Africa are told that Rome no longer requires grain or gold. They require a quota of living subjects, delivered monthly to the ports of Ostia to feed the aristocracy of the Eternal City. The military campaigns of the 1st century AD are short, brutal, and decisive. The catastrophe of the Teutoburg forest, where historically 3 Roman legions were wiped out by Germanic tribes, plays out very differently. When Arminius and his barbarians spring their trap in the rain-soaked woods, they do not find terrified Romans bogged down in the mud. They find the wolf packs, the 17, 18, and 19 legions, now fully turned, discard their armor. They do not need it. They hunt the Germanic warriors through the black trees with the senses of apex predators. The ambushes become the prey. The screams of the Germanic tribes echo for weeks. There is no battle. There is only the sound of snapping bones in the dark. Germania is not conquered. It is depopulated. To the east, the Parthian Empire, famous for its horse archers, attempts to hold the line. But arrows cannot stop a tide of creatures that heal instantly. The vampire legions storm Ctesiphon at night, scaling the walls like spiders. The Parthian king of kings is not executed. He is turned into a thrall, a mind-wiped servant chained to the foot of Caesar's throne. A warning to any other monarch who dares to resist. By 100 AD, the map of the known world is entirely red. The Mediterranean Sea becomes a Roman lake, literally used to transport cattle ships from the provinces to the capital. Resistance is biologically impossible. To fight Rome, you must fight the night itself. The rebellion of Boudica in Britannia ends not with a battle, but with the Iceni tribe vanishing overnight. Their villages left intact but empty of all life. Humanity learns the new law of existence. Keep your head down, pay the blood tax, and pray the emperor is not thirsty tonight. 2,000 years have passed since the Ides of March. History did not end. It froze. The Dark Ages, the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, these eras never occurred as we know them. Progress was not driven by the need to improve human life, but by the need to optimize the harvest. If you were to look at the world of 2025 in this timeline, you would not recognize it. The planet is shrouded in a permanent, artificial twilight. Massive geoengineering projects, authorized by the Eternal Emperor in the 15th century, released particulate clouds into the stratosphere to dim the sun, allowing the ruling caste to walk freely at noon. The sky is a bruised shade of violet, forever overcast. Rome is no longer just a city. It is a continent-spanning megastructure. The Ecumenopolis covers most of southern Europe, a Gothic nightmare of black marble skyscrapers that pierce the smog, connected by sky bridges of bone-white steel. Technology is advanced, but it is cruel. There is no internet, no freedom of information, only the imperial network which broadcasts the edicts of the Curia. The internal combustion engine was never invented. Instead, the empire runs on cold fusion and silent magnetic levitation trains that transport the most valuable resource on Earth. Humanity has been selectively bred for 2 millennia. There are no wars, because there are no nations, only the provinces. The human population is divided into two castes: the domestics, who serve as administrative thralls and servants during the day, and the livestock, who live in vast subterranean, factorious cities, living lives of medically induced coma, hooked up to machines that drain a precise amount of blood daily until they expire. And in the center of it all, in the heart of the Palatine district, sits the Temple of Caesar. He is still there, Gaius Julius Caesar, now over 2,000 years old. He is no longer the man who crossed the Rubicon. He has evolved into something else entirely, a creature of translucent white skin and eyes like burning coals, fused to the golden throne by tubes that feed him the distilled essence of 1,000,000 souls a day. He does not speak. He does not move. He simply projects his will directly into the minds of his Praetorian vampires. The Pax Romana is absolute. There is no crime. There is no poverty. There is only the order of the night. We often say in our timeline that the sun never sets on the British Empire. In this timeline, the saying is far more literal and far more terrifying. The sun never rises on Rome. This has been Chronos Mortis. The archives contain realities where humanity wins, and realities where we are merely food. Which file should be opened next? The nuclear necromancy of the Cold War, or the eldritch horrors of the Spanish Inquisition? To maintain your clearance level, subscribe and ring the bell. The night is long, and we have much to explore.